I see the born of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now I see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday again, February 10th, 2014. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network. My name is Gary Hendershot, and for about the next hour, I'm going to be barking at the moon. We got a number of interesting stories in the news for this week, but I'm going to have to do a little follow-up on one I mentioned last week. You know, there's this guy out there, Edward Snowden. Okay. And, you know, your opinion of Edward Snowden and $5 gets a cup of coffee at that high-priced yuppie coffee shop, same as mine. I hear some people say, you know, he's a CIA, NSA plant, because if he was for real, they'd already droned him. They'd already shot a Hellfire missile up his butt. I hear other people say, oh, no, this guy's a classic whistleblower. You know, he's the cat's meow. He's really a good guy. He should get the Nobel Prize. Whatever you believe, you know, you're entitled to your opinion. But you've got to admit that we probably would not be having a debate in the United States about the NSA and spying and the way the government seems to treat average Americans as if they are potential terrorists, except for the revelations of Edward Snowden. So, regardless of your opinion of this guy, regardless of your opinion, we should all be able to agree that this debate is a healthy thing. Well, last week I had a bit in my news coverage where I was talking about this interview that Snowden did from Russia with a German fella, and I thought the interview was pretty good. You know, there were no new revelations, no, looking behind the curtain, to see the wizard controlling all the levers and all that good stuff. None of that kind of stuff. But you got to see Snowden on camera make his case. You got to see his eyes. You got to see his facial expressions. And frankly, I kind of figured average Americans was adult enough, they could watch it objectively and make up their own damn minds. Well, it seems somebody decided that you Americans just don't have the maturity to be able to hear what this man had to say, that you're not able to consider arguments on the table and make up your own damn mind, and that you should be denied access to that interview. Very interesting, because it seems everywhere that interview was posted. I provided a link on my website over at smartscarecrow.com. I provided a link to the interview that I got to see. Started getting emails from folks saying, it's gone. Okay, so I'd search it down someplace else, and I'd find it, and I'd post that link. A day or two later, it was gone again. Seems every time this video gets posted anywhere for public viewing by American citizens, it gets taken down. So you think, okay, well, I'll go to the original source. I'll go to the publisher in Germany, where, the German fella here was interviewing Snowden. They published it, so I should be able to see it there, right? go there, and based on my IP address coming out of the United States, I was denied access. Yeah, it appears that this video interview was very heavily censored. I found it to be a bit of a puzzle because, frankly, like I say, no matter what your opinion of this guy Snowden is, you should have a right to view any material you choose so you can make up your own damn mind. The idea that the government might choose for you what is and is not appropriate harkens back to days of book burnings and witch hunts and stuff of that nature, and is not the kind of thing I find acceptable in what is supposed to be a democratic republic with a free press. Anybody out there who's really interested in that Edward Snowden interview, I can't post it anywhere because it appears every place it gets posted, it gets pulled down. But I do happen to know a few places where the original interview can be downloaded, where the file itself can be downloaded. If you're really interested, send an email to smartscarecrow@gmail.com, and I'll make sure you get a link to where you can download the damn thing. The hell with the government and their censorship. You got a right to know. You know, another issue that's kind of divisive here in the United States is the issue of what many refer to as immigration. Others see it more like an invasion. Now, this is another one of those issues that's being used to divide and conquer the American people. Bottom line is, no matter what color skin you got, if you come across the border in violation of that nation's law, you are, by definition, illegal. Now, I don't want to get into semantics. You know, there's a lot of the, folks who are propagandizing in support of these illegals who've crossed our borders in violation of our law. There's a lot of people out there saying, oh, they're not illegal, they're just undocumented. Well, I'm sorry. If I go out on vacation and I come back from vacation and somebody else has moved into my home, they're in my home illegally. They ain't in my home undocumented. They're in my home illegally. And a nation that cannot control its own borders, is it really a nation? Now, we spend billions of dollars every year helping the Israelis build fences to keep Palestinians out of Israel. But we can't seem to enforce a fence to keep people out of the United States. Now, most of these immigrants come over the southern border. The vast majority of them are Mexican and Central Americans. I hear arguments on all sides. I hear the arguments that, these Mexicans, they come up here, they work, they pick our vegetables, they do jobs that nobody else will take. I hear all the arguments. And, I can appreciate people's varying points of view on this topic. But we've got to get past this one key issue. These people are here illegally. Some say there might be as many as 30 million of them. I have no idea what the real number is. The government keeps saying, oh, there might be 10 million. Well, even 10 million's quite a few. But, some of the real, scaremongers out there are saying there might be as many as 30 to 50 million people here in the United States illegally. That's more than 1 in 10. If it's 50 million, that's more than 1 in 10. Now, it seems both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are in basic agreement that something has to be done about what they keep referring to as the immigration issue. Well, if they can really make a good, solid argument for permitting 30 million immigrants, let them make it. Okay, let the American people decide whether we feel we can absorb somewhere between 10 and 50 million additional people. But don't do this backhanded thing where, you just assume, well, they're here, so we got to figure out a way to make them legal retroactively. Okay, now wait a minute here. They're criminals. They broke the law. So instead of kicking them out or throwing them in jail, the kind of treatment you would expect if you were a criminal, if you broke the laws of the nation, we're going to retroactively give them a pat on the head and allow them to become legal citizens of the United States. Do you have any idea what that will do to the demographics of this nation? Perhaps even the language and culture of this nation, if we continue to permit absolutely uncontrolled immigration in the United States from roughly 120 some countries around the world, mostly Mexico and Central America. Well, in New York, their new mayor, this guy, was he de Blasio is his name? Is that his name? De Blasio? Am I pronouncing it right? Has decided he's going to solve the problem, for New York anyway, and he's going to issue illegal immigrants in New York some sort of paperwork, which I guess all of a sudden makes them legal. His argument is that, well, they need to be able to get a driver's license. They need to be able to sign a lease to rent an apartment. They need this, they need that, Wait a minute. If we were following the law, they need to be put on a bus and shipped back to wherever they came from. Okay? I mean, if we were at the least concerned about the law, we would not be talking about what social services they need. We would be talking about how quickly can we get them on a bus and get them shipped back to where they belong. But no, it looks like, at least in New York City, and unfortunately many places around the world, they're going to be provided with documents that allow them to have, at least in New York, identity. This is what de Blasio says. To all my fellow New Yorkers who are undocumented, as in, you're here illegally. To all my fellow New Yorkers who are undocumented, I say New York City is your home too, and we will not force any of our residents to live their lives in the shadows. Is that what we voted for? New Yorkers Is that what you thought you were going to get? I wish I knew a solution. But see, I'm old enough to remember that we already did this amnesty thing once before, okay? We did that during the Reagan administration, back when it was understood that there was only about 8 million here illegally. And Ronald Reagan said, okay, look, just this once, we see a special circumstance here. We're going to make all 8 million of you guys legal American citizens, but that's it. After that, we're going to close the gates. Okay, no more. All right, that was what we were told. The problem is the average American citizen has the attention span of a gnat and does not read their history. We've been down this path before. We already gave blanket amnesty once before, and it was supposed to solve the problem. Okay? Now the problem's back. Even worse than before. So what are we going to do now? We're going to give 30 million amnesty. Well, what happens in another generation? Are we going to have to give 150 million amnesty? Stop and think about it. Where the hell do you, as an American, draw the line? When have they gone just a little too far? On the federal end, Chucky Schumer says there's no real urgent, although he was, saying just a little bit ago that it was eminently urgent that we move on this immigration issue right now. But Chucky Schumer now says, well, we might be able to wait until after Obama's gone and we get a good old boy Southerner in there who's going to, treat this with a little bit more conservative point of view. So we might just put off our decision on immigration until 2017 or thereabouts. Of course, you got, Obama and his magic pen and phone, who's liable to just do it by executive order, so one never knows. Sometimes I get all worked up about this stuff. I gotta stay cool. Gotta stay cool. Nothing to get excited about. I think I'm going to just start calling this, my weekly segment, my I Love Obamacare segment, because it seems like every week there's something new and exciting to talk about related to Obamacare. The revelations just keep, it's like that sweater your Aunt Nellie knitted for you just keeps unraveling and unraveling and unraveling faster and faster. Oh, well, But latest announcement is that the Obama administration announced that it will delay implementation of part of the Affordable Care Act's employer mandate for the second consecutive year. Yeah, this is new and exciting. Again, I'm old enough to remember when the Congress said to the president, "Hey, we may go ahead and approve this Obamacare thing, but we may want to delay the employer mandate." And the president said, "Oh, you better not do that, or I'll veto the bill." What? And now, with a stroke of the pen and without any congressional consultation, the Obama administration just by executive fiat decided, well, we're going to give all you businesses with somewhere between 50 and 99 workers, we're going to give you another year to be in compliance with Obamacare. Don't you feel better now? Don't you feel better now? So with the stroke of a pen, with executive fiat, Obama has quite literally modified the law. He has just decided unilaterally that he will not enforce that bit of it. So what you wind up with a system that, Okay, first of all, you had, the McDonald's and all the others that were given an exemption. Then you had, a lot of big business that was given an extension. Now you got, medium-sized businesses being given an extension. You know who has not been given an extension yet on Obamacare? All you individuals out there who will have to buy some form of health care under this mandate, under this Obamacare mandate. You individual taxpayers, you have been given no extension. So you are required to comply. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Now, oh, yeah, I'm hearing the bumper music in the background. So I think before we get into what Boehner had to say about this latest on the Obamacare thing, we're going to have to take a little break here to sell some merchandise. So stand by. We'll be back in just a few moments. All right, we're back from that blatantly commercial announcements there. Have to sell some merchandise to keep the lights burning at the studio. I was doing my segment, I Love Obamacare. And we were talking about how, with a stroke of a pen, Obama had modified the law. And now if you're a medium-sized business with 50 to 100 employees, you get an extra year to be in compliance. Well, of course, on the other side of the aisle, there's these fellows called Republicans. We got the Demopublicans and we got the Republicrats. And this guy, this Republicrat, he's John Boehner. Now he's the Speaker of the House, so he's third in line. He's third in line of succession here. That's the way it works here in the United States. So he is, the crown prince, if you will. What he had to say about this is, once again, the president is giving a break to corporations while individuals and families are stuck under the mandates of his health care law. And once again, the president is rewriting law on a whim. If the administration doesn't believe employers can manage the burden of the law, how can struggling families be expected to? This continued manipulation by the president breeds confusion and erodes Americans' confidence in him and his health care law. We need fairness for all. Now, okay, that coming from the Republicrat. Now, see, usually the roles would be reversed, We'd have the Demopublicans out there, beating their chests about how we're for the little guy, we're for the families and the middle class and the working stiffs, and the Republicrats, they're supposed to be the party of the big money, and they're supposed to be on the side of the big business. What the All right, you had your joke for the evening. That was Scarecrow's joke of the evening. You have to have a fairly sophisticated humor to understand that. But, if you've been around for a little while and you've seen how these, Demopublicans and Republicrats operate, you know that it doesn't really matter, Yeah. And they both stink. Yes. Yeah. That's how it is here in the United States. We we vote for the smallest pile of poo-poo, the pile of poo-poo that stinks the least. Oh, boy. And some would say we get what we deserve, but the terrible thing is, for years I've had people tell me, well, the American people voted for it. I got news for you, friends. If you could really change something by casting a vote, it would be illegal. I guarantee you, okay? If you could really change something by going to the polls and voting, they'd make it illegal. So get used to it, all right? You are governed by the best bunch of villains and thieves money can buy. A little bit more on my I love Obamacare. We got a lot of Obamacare news tonight. Do you belong to a gym? You've been working out, trying to get healthy? Okay, I'm already out of breath just thinking about it. But if you happen to be a gym bunny, and if by chance the gym that you belong to offers tanning beds, you know what these things are, right? I'm sure a lot of the ladies, this is where you can go lay on this thing and get a tan in the middle of the winter, Oh, come on. I'm sure some of you, nobody's going to admit it, but I'm sure a couple of you have stretched out on one of these things and charcoal broiled yourself. But if the gym you belong to happens to offer tanning as one of their services, you're liable to get a 10% excise tax attached to your gym membership because of one of the many little ditties in the Obamacare legislation. Here's the wording from the article. A sign posted at a Falls Church, Virginia location says holders of black card memberships will be required to pay a tax on these memberships starting January 4th, 2014, as required by the implementation of provisions of the Affordable Health Care Act. This is not a change in your membership fee, but rather a tax required by the government. The reason these accounts are forced to charge the new tax is because they include the option for members to tan at the club. Obamacare has a tax on tanning salons. It doesn't matter if the members use or don't use the tanning facilities. You get to pay an excise tax on your gym membership just because they've got tanning beds available. Yeah. I love Obamacare. If it wasn't for Obamacare, I wouldn't have a whole hell of a lot to report about. There just wouldn't be anything interesting and exciting in the news if not for Obamacare. But there is one more little ditty I got to cover on Obamacare. It seems that this is a report out of Reuters. The Obama administration on Monday said people hoping to enroll in health care coverage for March 1st may have trouble applying by Saturday's deadline because of a planned 62-hour maintenance shutdown of the Social Security Administration's computers. So it seems that routine maintenance of the computers at the Social Security Administration is going to cause those who are last minute trying to get signed up before some kind of a March 1st deadline. The moral to the story is, if you want to get signed up in that Obamacare, you better hurry and get in there early because, the lines are forming. People are just standing in line to get signed up. And if you wait until the last minute, you're liable to get slowed down because of some maintenance that's going to go on over at Social Security. So, hurry, get your Obamacare fast while getting's good. It's called HealthCare.gov if you're really interested. Need a gulp of coffee after that one. All right. So I gave you 2 jokes tonight. Look, sometimes the news is so down and so depressing. If you don't laugh at it, you start crying. So yeah, I found a couple ditties tonight that I thought were kind of humorous, and you just got the second one for the evening. You remember back in November, our friends at J.P. Morgan Chase got a major slap on the hand. Boy, they got fined $13 billion. $13 billion. Now, to somebody like me, to somebody like you, to most people out there, That sounded pretty tough, you know. Holy cow, $13 billion. Wow. And it's all related to that mortgage scandal thing where they were, giving anybody who could breathe a mortgage, even knowing that chances are they couldn't possibly pay it back. Then they're bundling all this stuff together as some kind of low-risk investment. They claimed, these are mortgage-backed securities. These things are sure to pay off. And, you just got to buy these. These investments are just so darn tasty. And they sold these things to everybody, retirement funds, hedge funds, foreign governments. They sold these things like candy. Everybody was buying them. And I suspect that music is, I hear the music in the background, so we'll have to finish up this little ditty right after we get back from these important commercial opportunities. All right, we're back from the break. And just before we left, we were talking about our good friends at J.P. Morgan Chase. Yeah. An outfit called Better Markets filed a complaint in a U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., claiming that in exchange for the $13 billion settlement, the Department of Justice gave Chase complete civil immunity for years of pervasive, egregious, and alleged frauds and other illegal conduct related to the worst financial crash in the U.S. since 1929. So basically, when the actuaries looked at the risk analysis of having every individual who was cheated by J.P. Morgan Chase joining together in a class action suit or going after them individually and just thrashing and bashing them, what they finally came to realize is that, wow, 13 bill is a bargain. So $13 billion in fines, very little of which will ever find its way into the pockets of small to medium-sized investors who may have lost their retirements, may have lost everything they had due to J.P. Morgan Chase and their illegal practices. They're totally indemnified now. You can't sue them because, see, they made this deal with the Department of Justice. We pay this here, one-up fine, and we say, ooh, we're so sorry, we won't do that again. Yeah, until you're not looking. Actually, you know what? It wasn't a fine for doing anything that everybody else wasn't doing. It was a fine for getting caught. Okay? In spite of the fact that this was the largest settlement ever reached by the government in a suit involving a single bank, Better Markets says nothing about the process was transparent. Better Markets maintains that because of the lack of disclosure about the settlements and the negotiation process, no one has any ability to determine if the $13 billion agreement is fair, adequate, reasonable, and in the public interest, or if it was a sweetheart deal for Chase. So bottom line is, Better Markets has sued the Department of Justice, saying, in effect, the Department of Justice did not abide by its fiduciary responsibility to make sure that J.P. Morgan Chase was properly punished for its illegal activities. Remember recently, they said, well, corporations is people too. You remember that? When they were talking about, freedom of expression, and corporations should have a right to make political contributions because, after all, corporations are people too. Well, if corporations is really people, could we maybe, just maybe, have a corporate death penalty for corporations that really step over the line, might that be an option to consider? Maybe somebody like a J.P. Morgan Chase, who acted not just outside the public interest, but with malice and forethought, raped, pillaged, and plundered a large segment of the American population. Might they not stand trial and perhaps be put to death? Something to think about. As always, make up your own damn mind. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I guess I got to cover this one. And I tell you the truth, I'm not even really sure how it's the family hour. I cannot say right now on Rents Radio what this woman Nuland, well, whatever her name is. Somehow I suspect, she's married to some big power broker somewhere. That's the way you get these big shot jobs. And I'm sure she's some kind of neocon, whether she's a Demopublican or a Republican, I don't care. But, bottom line is we're talking about a not insignificant country in Eastern Europe called the Ukraine. Now, the Ukraine kind of sits right in the central middle section of Europe, kind of bridges Europe and Asia. Their southern neighbors include Bosnia and Turkey. To the east of them is Russia. To the west of them is Germany. To the north is Belarus. They're kind of smack dab in the middle. I mean, they've got a central location, and the Ukraine is one of the largest exporters of grain in the world. Okay, this is not an insignificant nation. Their history is tumultuous. Everybody has conquered them at some point or another. They've been part of Latvia. They've been part of Poland. They were invaded by the Mongols. They were part of the Turkish Empire when the Ottomans were going crazy. Most recently, they were part of the old Soviet Union. As a matter of fact, they were one of the founding members of the Soviet Union. They have very close ties to the Soviets. And when you look at the ethnic distribution, that area in green, that large section to the east, for those of you listening to this on radio, you can't see the map that I'm putting up on the video player. But a large chunk of the Ukraine is Russian-speaking. The eastern portion of the Ukraine is Russian-speaking. The smaller section to the west they speak what is called the Ukrainian language. It's a Germanic language. So you got the Slavic speakers in the east, and you got the Germanic speakers in the west. And like most of the gerrymandering that happened in the Ukraine, over a period of time, that you've got disparate people that are kind of thrown together in this country, and that's just the way it is. Hey, you get used to it. Yugoslavia was a perfect example. Yugoslavia had such a mix of ethnicities that it was, as soon as the strongman Tito got blown out of there, it was pretty hard to hold Yugoslavia together because all the various factions wanted to be the power brokers. We got the same problem in the Ukraine right now. You got the Russian speakers in the east who are basically in control of the country right now. You got the Eurocentric group in the west who really kind of like to pull the Ukraine away from Russia's sphere of influence and put it into a more Eurocentric type of environment. And of course, you've got the fascists in Europe and the United States who just are salivating over the potential of conquering the Ukraine away from Russia. Now, In recent times, there's been a lot of, shall we say, protests. Some are saying that these protests were funded by American and European interests. Must admit, the protesters in these seem to be very well equipped with, stuff that might be considered, I don't know, paramilitary. We'll just, I'll leave that to you. You make up your own damn mind on that. Bottom line is there's a lot of pushing and shoving going on in the Ukraine right now. In comes this woman, Nuland, and having a discussion with the ambassador to the Ukraine. Basically, was saying, hey, we want this guy in, and, we've spent, billions of dollars to get this regime change thing going on in the Ukraine. And, some of the stuff they were talking about was downright dirty, nasty, underhanded, cutthroat politics, the nastiest kind you can possibly imagine. It was a full and complete discussion of how we are organizing the overthrow of a democratically elected government in the Ukraine and installing one that is more in compliance with what we consider appropriate. I use the editorial we. Do you really care who's running Ukraine? I mean, frankly, as long as Ukrainians can come over here and visit and spend some money, and you can go over there and say, hey, how you doing? What do you got to sell? I mean, do you really care who's running Ukraine? Does it make any difference to you? The only people it makes any difference to is the oligarchs in charge. And which gang of thieves are going to rape, pillage, and plunder the Ukraine? Will it be the Russian oligarchs, or will it be the European oligarchs? That's what's at stake here. And this Nuland woman, in putting forward the American argument, basically said, F the EU. Who cares? Who cares what they think? This is how we want it to go. The amusing thing is that she carried on this conversation, and there's some serious dirt going on. The amusing thing is that had it not been for the fact that this stuff was recorded and published, it would all just be considered a big conspiracy theory. In the article I quote from here, there is little doubt that had this recording not surfaced, publications like the New York Times would dismiss reports of Washington and its allies manipulating the Ukrainian opposition as conspiracy theories. So this one, my friends, has been shown to be a conspiracy fact. The United States government is manipulating the opposition in the Ukraine in an attempt to wrestle them away from Russia's sphere of influence and plant them with European influence so that the Europeans and the Americans can be the ones to rape, pillage, and plunder the Ukraine. Probably the most amusing aspect of this entire episode is that as far as the media in the United States and Europe is concerned, the big issue is not so much the fact that the governments are manipulating the opposition, but that this woman said a dirty word. That's it for me. I have run out of time. So you betcha I'll be back to do some more barking at the moon next week. Until then, take care.
Calling out to you, won't you turn around? turn, won't you turn around?